an extremely important day as we anticipated. The adjustment plan was submitted, and it's in essence the start of the end of the bankruptcy of Puerto Rico. It's the end, the culmination of 3 years of work, of arduous work, and we are really pleased that what is being submitted into consideration of the court is to the benefit of our people and fair with the creditors of Puerto Rico. So Ms. Matos Santos will give you a briefing of what we just discussed, which I know is a lot. So let's go. Well, now I will try. Thank you. As our president said, the question is about where are we and where are we going. So we started this case with obligations, contractual obligations of more than 70 billion in terms of bonds, 50 billions in terms of retirement, and the central government right now, the adjustment plan that we're working on that has just been submitted to the court this morning, works with 35 billion in debt in terms of bonds emitted in the past and 50 billion in debt to the pension. So this plan works to end the uncertainty, to be able to restructure the obligations, the contractual obligations that Puerto Rico has today, and to decrease the debt to a level in which it is today, which is almost 30% of the recurrent funding, to less than 10%, and to establish limits for the future so that Puerto Rico does not have to be in the current situation. It works to restructure as well the debt for the pension, those who are pensioned, in a way that honors most of that debt. So 71% of those who are pensioned, 74% of those who are pensioned now, and the people that can receive pensions in the future will receive 100% of the pension that they expect. The difference is has some cuts of an average of 8.5. Today, the pension funds, there are some obligations, but they don't have money. Part of what this plan of adjustment does is to restructure the debt, the contractual debt of Puerto Rico, and it decreases it from 4.2 billion to less than 1.5 billion. So basically, through this restructuring, we provide the structure to have a sustainable debt, to be able to honor the pension to those who are retired, and to have that clarity of what are the obligations of Puerto Rico in the future, to be able to then continue providing critical services like education, public safety, and social services, healthcare, etc. So basically, this plan, what it's doing is it restructures the debt to today's levels, which are uncertain, to future net levels that are going to be more sustainable, including limits so that in the future the debt will be emitted only when it's going to pay buildings and highways and things that are going to be with us in the future, and that maintains to a sustainable level in the future, basically consistent with less than 10% that the adjustment plan includes. Thank you, Anna. Let's go to Mr. Gonzalez so that he can emphasize some numbers that you can have to add to what Ana Matos Santos has said. And here's some specific numbers. The adjustment plan that was filed today in the court calls to 35 billion in bonds for the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, and its dependents like the public building office. The actual we have as debt, current debt of 72 billion, but we already took care of some bonds, like Cofina specifically. We made some transaction in respect to the government fund, FOMB bank, and the authority fund. So Prasa and other subjects that we need to cover. So today's topic was 35 billion in obligations in bonds of the central government and other dependencies. This was also the highway authority. And we're going to decrease those 35 billion in value, in nominal value, that is contractual, to 12 billion. So it's a significant reduction, essentially to 1/3 of the cost or the value of what is being claimed. So this means that this annual service of debts of the central government of Puerto Rico, relative to those what is recovered, will go down 28%. That's the obligation. We're not paying it now, but if we're paying it contractually, so 28% of the budget of the central government would be to pay the debt. With this plan, it would go down from 28 to 9%. So a very substantial reduction. So 9%, really under the constitutional level of 15%. That was violence with the emission of debts. We surpass it. So we will take it below to some prudent levels and sustainable levels as we consider them. So those are the key elements and fundamental in terms of the service of debts for the government. In terms of pensions, let's start with remembering that the $50 billion in obligations for the payment of pensions, for that there are 0 assets that are segregated. So the pension plans that are supposed to receive annual contributions, they were all consumed throughout the years, and there are 0 assets specifically available for the payment of those pensions. So this puts it in risk, and that is what, in effect, we need to protect and restore. But we started from a very weak position for the payment of pensions. In effect, we're establishing trust for 30 years that will be fed with resources that will ensure the payment of the pensions. This will allow that there will be certainty with the payment of pensions. So the legal reality is that the pensions hardly can be protected they can be protected in a difficult manner in its entirety under the principles of the bankruptcy court between the creditors, considering that the creditors of pensions don't have collateral. They don't have technically priority. So we are achieving some structure with this plan if it is confirmed, and that's why I think that it's good that the pension committee will back it, and it will bring more security and resources and certainty for the payment of pensions. So this is where we are giving some strength to a part of the obligations of the government that currently are very weak, the basis to provide for them. And I also would emphasize, and we cannot underestimate this, that for the public workers that are under Sistema 2000, the 2000, who are under the retirement program system, it is really a system of definite contributions. It is not about benefits. It's like a 401k for those who know the term. These employees, what they contribute, unfortunately, they were mixed with other obligations and other resources of the system, and they were dissipated as well. They were not available there. So these resources that are $1.3 billion, which were contributed by the employees, not the employer, but the employees, they would be restored in this adjustment plan, and they would be segregated and administered independently so that this does not happen again, in which these funds were dissipated in the ordinary and daily operations in the retirement system. So to summarize, it seems to me that after 3 years of hard work, as we mentioned during the hearing, and a lot of difficulty, a lot of obstacles, we have arrived to a place that we can present an adjustment plan that we think is reasonable and equitable. in terms of claims of all the parties of this process, and we expect that it can be litigated, it will be discussed, it will be protested by some parties, and we expect that essentially in the way that we talked about it, it will be confirmed by the court. Thank you.
Let's go to questions now, Celia. Good morning. I ask you, what's the projection will we have with respect to the economy and economic development with respect to this plan? Nothing can occur without coming out of bankruptcy. So this is an essential step. Yesterday's meeting was precisely about that topic, to address development, economic development, the ease of doing business, and the structural changes that we are promoting. Many of them require legislation. All those can be done through the executive. It's a joint effort. This, as such, does not make the economy grow, but there would not be a future path if we don't come out of the debt. Selim? So is the economy stagnant? That's what I stated. What I would say, this is a condition, an essential condition to move the economy ahead, because it removes the uncertainty from the debt, from the government. It dissipates the scenery towards the future. It's not perfect. Puerto Rico still has to address competitiveness topics for the future, and we still have to work very hard, all of us, to move ahead. So it is a necessary condition, but not enough, not sufficient for the economic development. El plan se basa en un plan fiscal. En cuanto al PIB, las proyecciones que se han construido están aquí. El punto es, sin presentar el plan, sin dejarlo atrás, sin terminarlo, no podemos llegar a otro punto. Selimar, hello. I have 2 or 3 questions. The first, have you considered there may be, in the short term, any change in the income from foreign companies, that they will be eliminating the incentives to take that as a credit at the federal level that could change the income of the government, the revenues? We have taken that into consideration for many years. It's part of the conversation since we were appointed. It is not news for us. It's contemplated in the fiscal plan. So if that happens, if that revenue is removed, is eliminated, what we trust is that the government, and will help the government to reach certain solutions so the people of Puerto Rico can count on that contribution. You would fight for it, against it. The other thing is, where does the money come from for the trust, for the pensions? What's the ranking of that 26% that is going to receive a cut? I know there are some people who have very high pensions. How is that going to be distributed? The cut is going to be over those who receive $1,200 in pensions, but not considering Social Security. They would not be in the equation. That affects approximately 40% of the retirees of Puerto Rico. 60-some percent will not be affected. The cut will be for those who make more than $1,200. 60% receives less than $1,200 monthly, so that amount is protected. And if we take into consideration those who are retired today and those who retire in the future, that percentage goes up from 61% to 74%. So most of the people have pensions that is less than $1,200. So the cuts will be to those who, the 26% that has more than $1,200 monthly. In different scales, 8.5% over the amount. So it depends of what you receive. If you receive $2,000, it's a larger cut. beyond the 1,200. With respect to the trust, the first amount, as Jose Ramon stated, it's 1.3 billion. 1.3 billion comes from the resources that we have today. So there has been an assessment how much money Puerto Rico has today, and a large amount of those resources will go to the trust in the future. There will be annual contributions. That is the difference between what is projected is going to be the expenditures and the revenue. And a lot of that amount will be deposited in the trust in the next 10 years. Lisa, Univision. My question is also related to the cut to the 26%. I don't know if it's going to be different stages or until what year it's going to happen. How is it going to be worked? The cut, when it is established, is going to be towards the future, and it's going to be basically the benefit that person would have received in the future based on the benefits and the math. That the value of that cut will be less in the future with respect to the amount, because the projected benefits in the future are lower than the benefits today. It's 8.5% of the benefit that person receives. It's an average of 200 million annually, and it will go down in the future. Telemundo, I think the confusion is because you said that it's an average of 8.5 of the cut, but at a given moment that cut was going to be according to the pension. I think that's the confusion. It's 8.4 over the 1,200. It's 8.5% del total, de la pensión total, pero no puedes tomar tu pensión menor de 1,200. Por ejemplo, si recibes 1,250 por mes, no recibes un corte de 8.5 porque no puedes recibir menos de 1,200. Así que es un corte de $50. Es una tarifa fija, 8.5 recorte a la pensión, pero su pensión no puede ser nunca menos de 1,200. La pregunta entonces tiene que ver with what you stated, the speaker of the government here, with respect to the cuts. In principle, the government opposes the cuts, but will consider this agreement with the retirees plan. I would like to know what's your opinion with respect to the government's opinion that will be expanded later on today. First of all, we've had many conversations with the governor and the representatives. We understand their view. We have already set forth our view. It is a very extremely difficult situation. It has to be done because nobody wants a cut for the retirees. With respect to the position that they hold, we'll have to wait until what they'll state this afternoon by the governor, what she will say. I can tell you it's been integrated in the plan. If there is a superávit, a surplus in the budget, that money will be returned for the pensions. That will depend on the fiscal discipline and the economic growth that Puerto Rico will have in the future. We hope they can comply with it so we can restitute their money back to the pensions. Luis Valentin? I have a very quick question with respect to the cut to the pensions. First, the trust that has been created, if I understand well, the money comes after paying the debt, after paying operational budget, and then the rest of the money will go to the trust. Is that the procedure? The first amount comes from the money that is available today. Part of the cash available will be deposited in the trust for System 2000. In the future, yes, it will come the amount in excess of what is needed to pay for the budget, and from that the contributions, and to pay the debt. The debt, the budget, after, and then the money that will nurture this trust to pay the pension plan. First, we'll pay the pay-go, then the requirements to pay part of the expenses of the pensions from the main budget, the contractual debt that goes from 4.2 billion to 1.5 billion will be paid mi salud, the different budget parts, items, and that parts that is deposited in the trust from the annual trust. If we don't have any surplus, if you don't meet the metrics, what happens? The obligations established, the plan will be established to satisfy that obligation, and that's part of what will be worked in the future to manage to meet those obligations and to continue those deposits. Basically, we're in this situation because for a long time they didn't pay the obligations that they were supposed to be paid. They didn't deposit the monies in those funds, and that's why Jose Ramon stated that we're in a situation that we have 50 billions in debt and no assets. Now we establish monies that will go immediately to satisfy that obligation in terms of the deposits in the trust and the rules for the future to continue increasing those assets. First of all, the pay-go will be paid. It is not the pension are not paid. The reserve fund, the trust, is to manage instability from one year to another. But now we have a system that's a difference with a lot of transparency and groups that are paying attention that those contributions are being made by the unions who agreed to this structure. Remember, we substituted a situation where before they didn't have any assets or priority, and we're giving a structure where they have visibility of the resources. They start with some resources, like Anna said. It's from the current funds that the government has accumulated for not paying debt for 4 years. So you don't start in zero. But at the end of the day, this depends that everybody does their job. And I mean not only the government to run their numbers correctly, but also the unions, the public employees, that you pay attention that the contributions are being made so we don't fall in the same situation of total irresponsibility. No plan can guarantee the future, but can assure at least that there is more visibility. Tenemos que añadir que tiene que tomar el plan junto con el plan fiscal. El plan fiscal ha proyectado excesos a superávits para periodos de aproximadamente 30 para el 2037, y en ese superávit que están proyectados, y esos superávit proyectados después que del presupuesto operacional, pues después antes de la deuda, después de estos superávits, esto va a ir para la deuda según el plan, y el resto del superávit proyectado va a ir para el fondo, el fideicomiso de deuda. The decision to approve, there was no a vote. Was there an executive meeting that was discussed previous to the filing if that executive occurred, if it was unanimous or not? It did happen. It was yesterday. There was a meeting, executive for Metro.
Good morning. Good morning. I want you to give us more details about this policy of the debt that is going to be followed by the government, is going to be included in the adjustment plan. Please repeat the question. Details about the plan of how this is going to be managed, the plan of adjustment, what is included now. The adjustment plan talks about that policy, and the details are going to be worked on between the government and our team. In general, the adjustment plan talks about moving to this direction to ensure many things. One, that the future debt will be to 30 years and not like in the past that it has been to on a long-term debt, and that the debt that has been used is not to pay for recurring expenditures, but for highways, allocated to highways and bigger projects that are going to last for a long time, and that when it is restructured, it won't be for just to submit things for the long term, but for really to have savings and fewer obligations. And basically, it works with the limits that there are. Basically, it has the limits that there are today in the Constitution, and it proposes policy that will be more limited in going from fewer, so going for 30 years, so that it can cover all the resources instead of having, like, for example, like we have had in the past, the bonds, the general bonds and COFINA and that. So basically, so that all the debt that is guaranteed by the resources of Puerto Rico, it counts against the limit, and that is consistent with part of what we're talking about. So the policy is going to be consistent with what the adjustment plan is working on, that it will be to less than 10% of the recurrent resources. So basically, what is specific is being worked with the government. It will be worked with the government, but the adjustment plan talks about having this policy that will be consistent with those principles that I just talked about. And we must say that those fundamental principles of wise spending, management of the debt, really were the base of the management of the debt of Puerto Rico until recent years, and all were incorporated really in the policy dictated by the Constitution. So an opportunity for other media, Bloomberg News, Richard Kasky. Michelle Kasky, está en la línea? Eva Llorens. Yes, good morning. I had some doubts about the litigation trust that is being made up. So the way that I see it is trust that it is being made up to those that do not want to move forward. They can, you can pursue them or file some complaints in the court for those that don't have bonds, that have bonds for 2012 and 2013. That's the way I saw it. So I asked you if the fee examiner has told you something about this litigation trust, or that if he has to look into them. And the other is whether you could elaborate a little. I had that down. And also if you could elaborate about what are the consuming costs, because I didn't hear anything. I know that in the term sheet, as I saw, there were some consummation costs and that. So I want you to start talk about that. If you could elaborate on what exactly that is. So please, let's hurry. There are other. So the fee examiner has to talk about. We talked about that yesterday. The fees of the confirmation de la conferencia. La primera. Así que la primera pregunta, el fideicomiso, hablamos de eso esta mañana y el examinador no tendría que decir nada sobre eso, así que no entiendo que sea relevante al fideicomiso de litigio. Sí hay cargos en diferentes partes del plan que va a encontrar que se permiten. Hay un cargo por el RSA, un acuerdo con los bonistas, y también hay un dinero que se ha separado para las partes diferentes del acuerdo, así que el máximo de estos cargos, pero necesito ser clara en esto, no están pagados por el ELA, sino que vienen de la estructura de la deuda, de los pagos que ya se están planteando en el plan de ajuste. Así que hay un máximo de $300 millones, pero nuevamente no viene del ELA, sino de la distribución de la recuperación de estos bonos. Did everybody understand that? $300 million that weren't paid by the people of Puerto Rico, but by the bondholders. So it is being reduced from what they get back. So it is being reduced. It's not a fee that is being charged. It's not a statement for a fee for the people of Puerto Rico. Michelle Klasky, Bloomberg. Michelle. She doesn't want to, so let's continue. Quisiera, si puedo por un minuto, darle para esos que preguntaron sobre la política del manejo de la deuda, y sé que respondieron. Si vea el plan de ajuste cuando tenga tiempo, si lo puede ver, entiendo que es la página 62. El artículo 44 habla sobre todas estas partes diferentes del manejo de la deuda. Hay una variedad de cosas aquí. Hay límites en qué deuda se puede hacer. Así que específicamente el artículo 44 del plan de ajuste que se radicó está en la página 62 a la 68, algo así. Buenos días. Quisiera regresar al problema de los pagos de pensiones. Según el plan, el servicio de la deuda iría de 4.200 millones a 1.5 millones. Quisiera tener el mismo número para los pensionados. ¿Cuántos de estos pagos se le están haciendo a ellos y cuánto será luego del plan? Así que primero espero que no estemos confundiendo las cosas. Los 4.200 millones no es lo mismo. O sea, sería contractualmente antes de promesa para ambos, COFINA y el ELA. Así que le estamos comparando de 1 a 1.5 billones o 1.000 millones, que sería antes de la reestructuración de COFINA y el plan propuesto de ajuste. Así que esa es la reducción. John Marino, ¿estamos? Ella quiere hacer. La pregunta es la reducción de las pensiones. Es aproximadamente 120 millones anuales en costos de PayGo, que va bajando según transcurre el tiempo, pero empieza como en 120 más alto. ¿Qué es? Disculpe. ¿Conoce el número, la cifra? No. Le daré el número. Le podemos conseguir la cifra. El total del PayGo es de 2.2 en el plan. 2.2 en el plan. Jamarino. ¿Podría dar una vista, hablar un poco sobre cuánto de efectivo de cash se pagará a los bonistas como parte de la recuperación? Y también, como sabe, está pagando 1.3 a las pensiones inicialmente. Y también el comunicado dice que tiene algo de 22% de reclamación de PBA. ¿Cuánto más apoyo necesita para que esto pueda continuar? Gracias. Así, en la última pregunta, tenemos hoy 54% del apoyo del bono vintage del PBA. Así que eso es de antes del 2012, pre-2012. Tenemos 11% de la clase del apoyo GEO Vintage, así que entiéndase antes del 2012 y 2013-2014. Y todo este porcentaje incluye a estas dos. Así que es una clase por clase, un asunto de clase por clase. Y esperamos que tengamos más apoyo entre los bonistas. No estoy seguro de cuál fue su pregunta de cash. No sé si es el uso de cash o de efectivo en este plan. Es sobre 4 millones de dólares totales para sistemas, como describimos, 1.3 para los bonistas y otra parte en asignar cargos a las uniones. Así que, ¿cuánto es eso? No tuve la oportunidad de ver el plan completo. Es entre 2.000 y 3.000 millones de dólares. Depende de qué manera se finalice. Señora Isabel, un nuevo día. Buenos días, ¿podría dar algo de los 3.000, de los 3.000 millones de dólares? Mencionó que van a comenzar en un programa de reclutamiento de alcance que se discutirá. Si podría discutir este plan de ajuste, ¿cuándo empezaría y cuáles serían las primeras comunidades que lo están en? ¿Podría proveer un mapa de esos fondos de los 3.000 millones de dólares y la segunda de las comunidades para explicar esta propuesta? Y me pregunto cuándo ese programa comenzará y a quién le estaré hablando. Tengo viajes a municipalidades en mi itinerario, así que la primera que tengo entiendo que es a mediados de octubre. Hay Bonito y Barranquitas.
Los 35.000 millones, la división de los 35.000 millones de memoria, no te puedo decir, déjame ver si puedo buscarlo. ¿Alguien tiene el documento que me lo puede pasar para no cometer un error? Vamos a buscar la información y seguimos. La vamos a buscar. Estaba confundida porque entendía que el acuerdo con el comité de retirados preveía una adjudicación de 175 millones, que era lo que se iba a hacer al principio. El plan consideraría de alguna manera asignar fondos a ese fideicomiso y entonces, después de ese periodo de 5 años, entonces era donde íbamos a empezar a tener estas contribuciones adicionales por superávit. Quiero asegurarme. El acuerdo con el comité dice que hay 175 millones iniciales. Eso fue un sentido de certidumbre de cómo se haría, dada las proyecciones de superávits. No va a ser menos de 175. Esa es una marca, una referencia. Pero pensamos que va a ser más alto porque el superávit que se proyecta es mayor. Además de 1.300, besides the 1.3 billion and the pay go. If there was no Title III and restructuring, we would have the assets in zero under Title III and restructuring and the non-payment. We have been paying pay-go. The pay-go continues. The deposits in System 2000 are established. The deposit in the trust, and in the future, there is a combination of pay-go and deposits in the trust that will provide stability for retirement plans that they didn't have in the past. Stability they didn't have in the past. Are we done?
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.